A plainly dressed man walked into a fancy restaurant and was refused service by the staff because he was not classy enough. He left without saying a word, but the next day the staff were shocked to find out who the man was. Le Gourmet Priv wasn't just a restaurant, it was an institution, an experience. Perched atop a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of bustling Saigon, it represented the zenith of luxury dining, a place where multi-million-dollar dinners were booked months in advance. The air inside, cool and subtly scented with truffles and fine wine, hummed with an exclusive tranquility, a stark contrast to the city's chaotic energy far below. Warm, ambient lighting cast a golden glow on the plush leather seating, the walls adorned with abstract contemporary art, and the soft clink of crystal glasses against delicate porcelain created a captivating symphony of elegance. Every detail, from the meticulously folded napkins to the perfectly polished silverware, spoke of an unwavering commitment to unparalleled sophistication. The staff at Le Gourmet Priv were not merely servers. They were artisans of hospitality, meticulously trained in the delicate ballet of fine dining service. Dressed in crisp, bespoke black uniforms, they moved with an almost ethereal grace, their professional smiles seemingly etched into place. Yet, beneath this veneer of impeccable service lay a deep-seated self-importance, an unspoken arrogance reserved for those they deemed unworthy of their elevated domain. They were gatekeepers, subtly filtering guests not just by reservation, but by an unspoken code of perceived status. They believed they could discern, with a mere glance, who truly belonged within these hallowed, expensive walls and who did not. It was into this meticulously curated sanctuary, on a particularly bustling Friday evening a night, when the incessant ring of reservation calls underscored the restaurant's exclusive demand, that an elderly man stepped. His name was Alex. He was dressed plainly, in unremarkable trousers and a simple, unassuming button-down shirt, devoid of any visible markers of wealth or high social standing. His shoes, though clean, were clearly well worn, carrying the quiet dignity of age and utility rather than the sheen of luxury. He moved with a calm, unhurried pace, a stark contrast to the swift, purposeful strides of the city's elite who typically graced this establishment. His presence, or rather, his lack of overt affluence, was an immediate anomaly. He walked quietly towards the polished reception stand, where a young female manager named Lynn was absorbed in reviewing the evening's reservation list on her sleek tablet. Lynn, with her impeccably styled high bun and sharp, precisely made-up features, was the very embodiment of Le Gourmet Priv's refined haughtiness. She saw herself as the ultimate arbiter of entry, capable of categorizing patrons with a single, practiced look. She was confident in her ability to instantly identify who belonged and who was merely a curious, misplaced wanderer. Lynn, without even fully looking up, registered Alex's unassuming attire. Her perfect brows subtly furrowed, her eyes, still fixed on her tablet, flicked dismissively towards his simple clothing. "Good evening, sir," she began, her voice cool, tinged with a clear note of skepticism, barely bothering to search for his name on her screen. "Do you have a reservation?" The question was less an inquiry and more a veiled challenge, delivered with an air that already anticipated a negative answer. "We are fully booked tonight, sir. We do not accept walk-in guests." Her tone was clipped, decisive, and subtly imbued with a superiority that plainly communicated, "You don't belong here." Alex simply offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. His composure remained unruffled. "I do not have a reservation," he responded, his voice calm, even-toned. "However, I only require a small table, nothing fancy." Lynn let out a small, derisive chuckle, a brittle sound that lacked any genuine amusement, carrying instead a sharp edge of contempt. "Sir," she said, her voice rising slightly, just enough to catch the attention of a few nearby servers, who instinctively glanced over. Her words were carefully articulated, each syllable dripping with condescension. "This is Le Gourmet Priv. Every single seat here is fancy, and every table is already reserved by our esteemed guests. We do not have small tables, nor do we cater to walk-in patrons of your nature. Perhaps you have mistaken this establishment for another." She emphasized mistaken with an undisguised, mocking insinuation that he was out of his depth. The surrounding staff members exchanged knowing glances, some suppressing quiet snickers, their eyes darting towards Alex with an almost palpable disdain, reinforcing Lynn's judgment. Lynn then turned her back slightly, a clear gesture of dismissal, her attention already shifting, effectively ending the conversation without another look at Alex. "You may leave now, sir." Alex did not argue. He did not raise his voice, nor did he betray any hint of annoyance or disappointment. His expression remained placid, almost detached. He simply nodded his head slightly, offered one last, almost poignant smile, then quietly turned and exited the restaurant, his footsteps as calm and unhurried as when he entered. His silence, his utterly placid demeanor in the face of such open scorn, seemed to annoy Lynn even further. She scoffed inwardly, thinking just as I thought. These types always come to gawk and then slink away when they realize they can't afford it. She immediately dismissed him from her mind, convinced she had handled the situation perfectly, efficiently weeding out an undesirable element. She remained entirely oblivious that her arrogant disdain had just cost the restaurant an encounter with a man capable of completely altering its destiny. The subtle click of the revolving glass door as he exited sealed not just his departure, but, unbeknownst to Lynn and her staff, the sealed fate of Le Gourmet Privé. Mr. Alex walked away in silence, his figure gradually disappearing behind the revolving glass doors of Le Gourmet Privé. Not a single complaint, no outward sign of anger or disappointment. He simply continued on his way, blending into the bustling stream of city life. Lynn, the manager, shrugged dismissively, then returned to her duties, quickly erasing the recent incident from her mind. To her, he was just another unimportant walk-in customer who had known his place and left. However, this brief encounter wasn't entirely unwitnessed. Near the entrance, a young intern named Trung was busily arranging drinks on a tray, preparing to serve guests. Trung was a fresh graduate, still brimming with idealism and a clear-eyed view of the world, untainted by the cynicism that often permeated the high-pressure environment of a luxury establishment. He had observed the entire exchange: Lynn's cold demeanor, her disdainful glances, and her thinly veiled insults directed at Mr. Alex. Every word Lynn uttered, every subtle sneer, every dismissive gesture made Trung feel a growing discomfort and a deep sense of indignation. He felt a profound embarrassment on behalf of the restaurant, and a quiet, empathic connection with the elderly man who had been so casually humiliated. Trung instinctively lowered his head, avoiding Lynn's gaze, trying to focus on his task, but his mind churned with unease over the blatant disrespect he had just witnessed. He wished he could have said something, done something, but as a lowly intern, he felt powerless, just another invisible cog in the meticulously organized machine of Le Gourmet Privé. As Mr. Alex's unassuming figure disappeared from view, Trung continued his work, but his usual focus was shattered. He moved through the restaurant, serving drinks, clearing tables, his ears still replaying Lynn's harsh words. The polished façade of Le Gourmet Privé, which had initially impressed him with its elegance and professionalism, now seemed to crack, revealing a less appealing underbelly of snobbery and elitism. He watched as Lynn, moments after dismissing Mr. Alex, returned to greet a well-known celebrity with an effusive, almost fawning smile, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. The blatant contrast between her treatment of the two individuals solidified Trung's discomfort. He knew that true hospitality wasn't about serving only the rich or famous. It was about treating every person with dignity and respect, regardless of their perceived status. This was a principle his modest upbringing had instilled in him, and it clashed sharply with the reality he was now experiencing. Meanwhile, entirely unknown to the staff at Le Gourmet Privé, a pivotal moment was unfolding just a few blocks away, in one of the city's most prestigious corporate high-rises. In a sleek, minimalist executive boardroom, a colossal investment deal was nearing completion. This was a highly confidential merger and acquisition, rumored to involve a prominent chain of fine dining restaurants, but the specifics were cloaked in absolute secrecy. The air in the boardroom was thick with anticipation. the only sounds being the soft rustle of legal documents and the low murmurs of highly paid professionals, lawyers in sharp suits, financial consultants with grave expressions, and top-tier executives with an air of calculated power sat clustered around a massive, polished conference table. They meticulously reviewed every clause of the intricate contract, their focused gazes fixed on the legal jargon. This was a multi-million-dollar transaction that would reshape a significant segment of the high-end service industry. Every piece of information was guarded with extreme caution, and the identity of the buyer, the individual or entity behind this monumental deal, remained strictly unannounced to the public, even to the vast majority of the involved parties. The identity of this buyer was known only to a select few at the very apex of the corporate hierarchy: the lead counsel, the chief financial officer, and a handful of senior board members. They were awaiting a crucial meeting the following morning, a final definitive gathering where the identity of the new owner would finally be unveiled, and all the intricate details of the acquisition would be officially confirmed and announced. The anticipation in that boardroom was palpable, a stark contrast to the casual dismissal occurring simultaneously at Le Gourmet Privé. The buyer's secrecy was not merely for tactical advantage, it was a deliberate strategy. This individual, or group, was known for their meticulous attention to detail, not just in financial matters, but also in evaluating the underlying culture and operational integrity of any acquisition. They believed that true value extended beyond balance sheets and brand names. It lay in the people, the ethos, the intangible elements that defined a business. The identity of this discerning buyer was poised to send shockwaves through the industry, but for now, it remained a tightly held secret, a powerful hand waiting to be revealed. The stage was being set for a dramatic unveiling, unbeknownst to the very individuals who would soon be directly affected by it. The morning after Mr. Alex's silent departure and the unseen machinations of the high-stakes corporate deal, an unusual buzz permeated Le Gourmet Privé. It wasn't the refined hum of a busy restaurant preparing for service. It was a distinct, almost excited murmur of gossip. The air, usually thick with the scent of freshly baked pastries and brewing coffee, now carried the sharper tang of speculation and anticipation. News travels fast in the tight-knit world of high-end hospitality, and the word had spread like wildfire the restaurant was about to have a new owner. Some major corporation, or perhaps an incredibly wealthy individual, had acquired Le Gourmet Privé. Everyone had heard whispers, but no one knew the specifics, fueling a frenzied atmosphere of conjecture. The staff, particularly those who had been with the establishment for years and considered themselves indispensable pillars of its success, were conspicuously animated. They congregated in hushed yet intensely audible groups near the kitchen pass and in the staff locker rooms, their conversations brimming with a self-assured arrogance. Their faces were flushed with excitement, interpreting this acquisition as a golden opportunity for the restaurant to undergo a purification, to shed any elements they deemed unsuitable or less than perfect. They envisioned a stricter regime, an even more exclusive clientele, and a weeding out of the dead weight, their less efficient or less glamorous colleagues. "I hope the new owner cracks down hard," one veteran server, her lips pursed in a knowing smirk, muttered to a junior colleague. "Get rid of those freeloaders who just make a mockery of fine dining service." Her gaze flicked dismissively towards a group of newer, less experienced staff members, implicitly labeling them as the undesirables, who would surely be purged. "Exactly," chimed in a sommelier, adjusting his impeccably tied bow tie with a flourish. "We need to filter out the common folk from here. Our restaurant deserves an even higher class of clientele, a more discerning palate. This is our chance to truly elevate Le Gourmet Privé." Their voices, though kept to a conspiratorial murmur, oozed with a sense of self-importance and a shared belief in their own superior worth. They eagerly discussed the potential for even higher standards, more rigorous protocols, and stricter dress codes that the new owner might implement. They positioned themselves as ready and willing to embrace these changes, convinced that their established tenure and perceived excellence would make them invaluable assets to the new regime. The topic of conversation often veered to the recent incident, with the elderly man Sol Lin, the manager, would recount her version of the story to anyone who would listen. always painting herself as the discerning gatekeeper, the defender of Le Gourmet Priv's elite status. He clearly didn't belong, she would assert, her chin held high. One glance and you could tell, people like that just dilute our brand. The new owners will appreciate that I kept standards high. Her colleagues, nodding in agreement, reinforced her delusion, unaware that her high standards had, in fact, been a profound act of disrespect towards the very person who now held their collective future in his hands. However, a subtle undercurrent of anxiety began to ripple through a smaller segment of the staff. These were the more observant, perhaps less outwardly arrogant individuals, or those who felt their own positions might be precarious. They whispered nervously about the rumors of tightening discipline and personnel overhauls. They exchanged worried glances, their expressions reflecting a quiet dread rather than the excited anticipation of their more confident counterparts. Some were even discreetly preparing their resumes, quietly printing out their employment histories, or updating their LinkedIn profiles, fearing that under the new ownership, the work environment would become even more cutthroat, or that they simply wouldn't meet the unspoken, yet increasingly stringent, new demands and be summarily dismissed. This anxiety gnawed at them. Despite the outward bravado of others, Trung, the young intern, was acutely aware of this pervasive tension. He moved through the dining room and kitchen, absorbing the collective energy. He heard the arrogant chatter, the dismissive remarks about undesirables, and the quiet, nervous whispers of those fearing for their jobs. The smug confidence of Lynn and her inner circle grated on him. He remembered Mr. Alex's calm demeanor, his unruffled smile in the face of such open scorn. The contrast was stark, and it deepened Trung's unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that the other staff members were missing something crucial, that their arrogance was a dangerous blindness. He felt a growing sense of foreboding, a quiet certainty that the incoming changes would be far more profound, and perhaps far more revealing, than anyone currently imagined. The general atmosphere was one of chaotic anticipation, a volatile mix of self-serving excitement and underlying fear. The staff, consumed by their own internal narratives of importance and survival, remained oblivious to the true nature of the impending revelation. They were so focused on who they believed they were and who they thought the new owner should be, that they had entirely overlooked who the new owner actually was. The arrogance of one faction had inadvertently created a pervasive undercurrent of insecurity throughout the entire restaurant, a simmering discord just waiting to explode. No one, not even the most self-assured, could possibly predict what would truly unfold in the internal meeting that was scheduled for the very next morning. The stage was set, the players in their positions, all unknowingly awaiting the dramatic and humbling climax. The next morning, an emergency internal meeting was called. The air inside Le Gourmet Priv was thick with tension, palpable enough to almost taste. Every employee, from the top-tier managers down to the servers and even the young intern, Trung, gathered in the restaurant's main dining hall, which had been hastily rearranged into a makeshift conference space. Rumors about the new owner and impending changes buzzed like an agitated hive, leaving everyone on edge. Lynn, the manager, stood at the front, her face carefully composed, ready to greet the new boss with a practiced, deferential smile. She had spent the night rehearsing her welcome speech, envisioning a powerful, impeccably dressed figure who would undoubtedly appreciate her unwavering commitment to the restaurant's elite standards. The grand main doors of the restaurant, typically reserved for the arrival of esteemed guests, slowly began to open. All eyes, hundreds of them, darted towards the entrance, holding their breath in collective anticipation for the appearance of a billionaire CEO or a formidable investment delegation. A hushed silence fell over the room, so profound that the soft clinking of the chandeliers seemed amplified. And then, the figure stepped inside. It wasn't a young, sharp-suited CEO, nor was it a stern, powerful investment team. It was Mr. Alex, the plainly dressed elderly man whom Lynn had so coldly dismissed from the restaurant just a few days prior. The entire hall froze. Not a single sound. Hundreds of eyes, wide with disbelief, shock, and dawning horror, swiveled towards him. Lynn stood utterly rigid, her meticulously made-up face turning a stark, ashen white. Her carefully constructed composure shattered into 1,000 pieces. She simply could not believe her eyes. The man she had scoffed at, sarcastically dismissed, and arrogantly turned away, was now walking in as the undisputed new owner. Mr. Alex was not angry. His face remained calm, serene even, and he wore that same faint, gentle smile, a smile that now, in this moment of revelation, everyone belatedly recognized as carrying an immense sense of power and profound understanding. He walked directly towards the makeshift stage at the front of the hall, his steps slow and deliberate, yet undeniably firm. He picked up the microphone, allowing a few seconds of potent silence to stretch and expand across the stunned room, giving the shocking truth time to fully sink into the minds of every single person present. Then he spoke, his voice deep, clear, and perfectly articulate, completely at odds with the image of a harmless, unassuming patron. "Good morning, everyone at Le Gourmet Prive. I'm sure many of you are quite surprised to see me here." He paused, his gaze sweeping slowly across the rows of familiar faces in the hall. His eyes lingered for a moment on Lin, then on the faces of the servers who had quietly snickered, before finally resting, with a subtle softening, on Trung, the young intern who had shown him the only act of genuine kindness. "Over the past few days," he continued, his voice resonating with quiet authority, "I've had the unique opportunity to experience this restaurant's service from a very particular perspective." He didn't elaborate further, but he didn't need to. His next words were simple, yet delivered with an undeniable weight that sent a shiver down every spine in the room. "I have been served enough to know this restaurant needs to change." That single sentence resonated like a final verdict. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple, undeniable truth, distilled from his own personal experience, an experience steeped in the very contempt he had silently endured. Heads bowed across the hall, their arrogance evaporating, replaced by a profound sense of shame, guilt, and a creeping dread about what would happen next. The realization that their own actions, their own unchecked snobbery, had led directly to this moment was a bitter, unpalatable pill for many to swallow. Following Mr. Alex's quiet yet devastating pronouncement, the consequences at Le Gourmet Prive were not mere threats. They were swift and decisive. That very same day, stark decisions were made. Lin, the arrogant manager, was immediately terminated. Her blatant disrespect and discriminatory behavior were deemed utterly unacceptable in a high-end service environment, especially under the new ownership of Mr. Alex. Her dismissal served as an immediate, undeniable shockwave, rippling through the entire staff. A few other employees, those who had openly sided with Lin or displayed consistently negative attitudes, also received termination notices or were severely demoted. The atmosphere in the restaurant became cleansed, but also profoundly somber, as the weight of the new reality settled in. However, amidst this wave of accountability, a bright spot emerged. Trung, the young intern, who had been the sole beacon of kindness and respect towards Mr. Alex, received a personal summons. He was invited for a private meeting with the new owner. Mr. Alex looked at Trung with eyes full of quiet satisfaction. "You showed me that this restaurant still possesses its core values," he stated simply, a profound acknowledgement of Trung's character. Trung was not only retained, but was also directly promoted to a full-time position, bypassing the usual probationary period. He was also promised intensive, specialized training to become a potential manager, a clear investment in his future. A few days later, a simple, yet profoundly impactful, message appeared. It was printed and elegantly framed, then prominently displayed on the staff bulletin board in Le Gourmet Prive's back-of-house area. Beneath the signature Alex were these powerful, moving words: "If you judge people by what they wear, you'll never see what they're worth." That message became the new guiding principle for all of Le Gourmet Prive's staff. From that day forward, the service attitude transformed completely. Every guest who walked into the restaurant was welcomed with genuine, heartfelt respect, regardless of their attire or outward appearance. The employees had learned a crucial lesson. A person's true worth lies not in what they wear or how they present themselves, but in their character and how they treat others. Le Gourmet Priv not only maintained its reputation as a high-end restaurant, but also evolved into a place where kindness and respect were paramount, a costly lesson bought by arrogance and paid for with the unseen value of human dignity.